Well, hello again. It's good to see you digitally. I'm glad you guys have joined us today on our online stream. We're continuing our series, You're Not the Boss of Me. We have taken some work that our good friends at Northport Community Church did, and we made our own, and I got to give a shout out to them. Today, we are going to talk about anger. I think that is a very appropriate topic for the season that we're in, because I know that this week before, I've had to deal with a little frustration, a little anger, because you go to buy some chicken and everybody has made a run on the grocery store and you're like, really guys, RTP, all that good stuff. And so we're going to talk about anger today. And I got to tell you, for me, this is personal, because this is one of those hot button topic issues that I struggle with, that I deal with. God has my entire life been working, changing me, molding me, helping me to grow into the man He wants me to be, but I'm not quite there yet in some areas, and this is one of them, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit. Now, as we talk about anger, I want you to understand something, though. There is a place for anger that is righteous, that is not wrong, that is not sinful, that is good, that is healthy. Even Jesus Himself got angry. Jesus, we read in the Gospels, He walked into the temple, and He did some table turning over, and He got really mad at the injustice that He saw. And so there's a place for anger. Timothy Keller says this, he says, if you have ever loved someone or loved something, then you have gotten angry. And there is a place for anger. There's a place for anger when you see someone you love that has been hurt, when you see injustice in the world, when you see wrong, there is a place for us to get angry at the injustice and wrongs that we see in the world. That's not the anger that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about anger that is unrighteous anger, sinful anger. And the problem is, most of us, most of the time, 99% of the time, the anger that we have, the anger that comes out of us, the anger that spews all over the people closest to us, it's not righteous anger. It's sinful anger. It's uncontrollable anger. It's anger that we need to deal with. And so we're going to look at that today. As we're getting ready to do that, we're going to look first at the cause of our anger. And you can turn in your Bibles or on your phone or whatever you're using today, or even on our live stream. We're going to look in James. We're going to be in James this morning. We're going to look at a couple of chapters in James. We're going to look at James chapter 4. But one thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what causes our anger. And I know some of you out there, you're like, dude, I know what causes my anger. I've got a laundry list of anger, and I brought this wonderful, perfect size for short me punching bag up here, because some of you maybe this week you've really wanted to punch on something as you've tried to live your life, and maybe you're frustrated with all the changes we're doing. But you'll say, hey, I know where my anger comes from. My anger comes from they, that, he or she. Maybe you're in a relationship, you're like, right now, my spouse is making me mad, and of course, you can't physically hit your spouse, but you're like, I'm frustrated, and maybe you say, things are making me mad. Maybe you go and you're trying to drive, and people can't drive these days, and you're like, they're the cause of my anger. That's why I take a punch. That thing's real bouncy. You're like, I know what makes me angry. I get frustrated when I do go and I stand in line at the grocery store, and we're supposed to be social distancing, and somebody comes up and they're all over my grid, and they're like, hey, how you doing? And you're like, leave me alone. Get away from me. I went the other day, I had to get a part for my car, and I really didn't want to go into the parts store, but I did, and the little young guy that was helping me out, he was like really close to me, and I'm like, dude, back off. I don't want to get the COVID from you. I'm older. I'm like at risk or something. And so you would say, I know what the cause of my anger is. It's out there. It's those people. It's he or she. It's that situation. I know what makes me angry. But you know what? James would disagree with you, because look what he says in James chapter 4. He tells us what the cause of our anger is. Notice what he says here. He says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? He's asking a question, saying, why are you fighting? Why are you quarreling? Why do you have anger? Why are you blowing up people on Facebook? Why are you getting in rants on Facebook? It's been interesting to see, social media, we love to hide behind keyboards and yell at each other. So he says, what causes all this stuff? He says, don't they come, you might want to highlight this, from your desires that battle within you. Right here, you see, he's not saying, he's not giving us the out to say, they caused me to be angry. No, James is saying your anger is not out there, it's in here. And here it is. The cause of my anger, I know for me, the cause of my anger is not they, that, he, or she. It's me. It comes from within. He says there, it's your desires. They're waging with you. And you say, well, why is that? Why is it that the cause of my anger is not the external stuff that I want to metaphorically punch sometimes? What is it? It's the things that are going on inside your heart. We learned at the very beginning of this series that out of the heart, out of the essence of who we are, that's where all this stuff that wants to boss us around comes from. And so if we're going to understand that we don't want anger to be the boss of us, we've got to understand that it's coming from deep within us. And here's the big thing. This is why. Look at what he says in verse 2. He says, here it is, you desire but do not have, so you kill. Now I think here in this message that in the church that James was writing to, that we're not actually killing each other. I think he's using this as a way to say you go to extremes. But Jesus said if you hate someone in your heart, you have anger at someone, you've murdered them in your heart. And so he's going there. Your anger can, in some extreme cases, anger can lead to murder. But look what he says here. He says, you covet, meaning you want something. But here it is. But you cannot get what you want. So you quarrel and you fight. There's the source of our anger. We don't get what we want in a given situation. That person is not giving us what we want. That individual is not doing what we want in the moment. The season or situation we find ourselves in is making us angry because we don't get what we want. Hey, here's the thing. If everybody in the world would just do what I want, I would never get mad. And neither would you. Neither would you. I had this come so true the other day. You know, we're in this new season. It's been a little crazy. We're doing live stream. We were doing live stream before. Thank God for technology and that we can do this and that we were already prepared to do it. But a week ago, about a week or so back, when this all started to happen, I had called up the staff. I'm like, hey, we're going to have to cancel church meeting physically. We're going to have to go and do complete live stream. And one of my friends, one of my really good friends on the tech team, he is my best friend actually. He had texted me on a Thursday night and said, hey, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to video it tonight. And you can just come in whenever you want on the weekend and we'll video it. And I was like, no, that's not the plan. That's not what we're doing. And so I got really wigged out about that. I was so wigged out. I drove here to church. The tech team and the band were practicing. I walk in. They hadn't started yet. They were sitting down front. Tommy's like, hey, he's here, man. We'll just video this. And I'm so wigged out. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And some of the guys were like, man, Heath walked in like a little bulldog. He was like, I was super like mad. I'm confessing I was angry. And then come to find out, my best friend was just playing a joke on me. I was like, I'm going to get you back, buddy. No, not really. And so the whole tech team, we had a good laugh about that. I said, great, I got sermon material now. But then I had to step back for a minute, and I actually felt bad because I was like, why did I get so angry? It's because I had a control issue. You see, our anger comes from our need to control the situation, the season, our people. And we got to understand that we can't control anyone. I can barely control myself. And maybe you find yourself in this season right now, you say, I'm kind of angry with things that are going on. And maybe it's because right now there's things going on in the world that we live in right now that we just can't control. One thing I'm trying to do, I'm trying to stay informed in it, but I've noticed I've got to step back and not watch the news and get on social media and read all the reports 24/7 because one, it can cause me to get fearful. It can cause me to get angry because I'm like, no one's really giving us a game plan in the long term or whatever. You get angry, frustrated with the situation. And I finally had to understand, I'm like, I'm just not in control of this. But we know the one who is in control. We have to trust him. You know, and sometimes we'll use that word. I've been using it even. I'll say, I'm frustrated. Andy Stanley tells a good story. He said that he was going to therapy one time, and he was telling his therapist, he said, I'm not angry. I'm just really frustrated right now. And the therapist said, well, I'll give you a minute, and you can tell me the difference. It's really no difference. We just get angry. We get angry when we can't control stuff. And so if anger comes from the inside, if anger comes from our need to control the things around us, to control others, to control the situation, how then can we deal with it so that it's not spilling out over the people that we love the most? How do we get to the point where we can say to anger, you're not the boss of me? How do we do that? Well, James will tell us that. If you flip over, go back to the beginning of the book of James, James chapter 1. He has some good instruction for this, and I think is applicable to help us with our anger. Look at what he says, James chapter 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That is really good, and it's so true. And right there, we have everything we need to know in a lot of ways of how to combat our anger. I think the first one is this. You can write this down if you're taking notes, maybe back there at your house, wherever you're watching from. One, we need to see the other side. Notice he says, everyone should be quick to listen. We live in a day and an age where people are not quick to listen. We are so quick to give an opinion. We're so quick to say what we think. We're so quick when we don't have all the information to give an opinion and we don't listen. But here he's saying, you need to be quick to listen. You need to run to the point where you are so fast to listen before you speak. And I think an ingredient of that is, in order to listen, to truly listen to someone, to really hear what someone's saying, we got to put ourselves in their shoes. We got to see it from their side. And sometimes that's a challenge, because I know for me, if I'm dealing with a situation, maybe in my marriage or with my wife, and she's telling me something that maybe I've done that upsets her, I immediately get defensive. Or I immediately go to the point where I want to fix it. And so I don't really hear what she's saying. I don't really see where she's coming from. I don't try to get her perspective. I just automatically want to defend my hurt or to defend my position or my point. But when you can see things from the other side, even if in the moment you don't agree with the other side, it allows you to calm down in the moment. And maybe when you can see something from someone else's perspective, you won't be so angry at them if you get where they're coming from. You know, we have a rule around here as staff. We always, because, you know, being in church work and doing what we do, you're going to have critics. Anything you do publicly, you're going to have criticism. You're going to have critics. And good thing is we don't have that a lot, because you guys are pretty awesome. But we do deal with that a little bit. And I've always told the guys, I've always told our staff, I'm like, there's three things that I always say when someone's being critical. I say this. I go, 1, do they love Jesus? 2, do they love our church? And 3, do they love me? And if those three things will be met, I'll listen. I mean, I like what I'm hearing, but I know, 1, if they really do love Jesus, it's not about them, then I know that they're not out to simply have an agenda or hurt someone. 2, I know if they love our church, they really want what's best for their church. And 3, I know they really do love me, then they're going to come from a place of love and not hurt and anger. And I say, why do you do that? Because I know then, if I know those three things, I can trust that I can go and put myself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. If the three things aren't met, you know, you can learn anything from anyone, but I'm really try to be careful about what I hear from someone if those three things aren't met. And so, you know, he says that, see the other side. Second thing is, you can take notes, write this down, is you got to measure your response. Notice here, he says, look what he says. He says, be slow to speak. Man, that is really hard sometimes. I know for me, because I've said this before, you know, we talk about fight or flight. I don't think there's any flight in me anymore much in my life. My predisposition is fight. You know, if you're that person, you say something and you come at me, I want to get down with it. I want to karate kick this so bad right now, but I'm not going to. But you've got to measure your response. He says there, be slow to speak. Think about what's coming out of your mouth. And I'll say this in the technological age that we live in, the fact that we are doing this online. That also means, I'll add to this, be slow to type. Because that's speaking too. It amazes me that we will get online and we will type things out and say things to our brothers and sisters or to people in the world. We will hide behind a keyboard and act in ways and be so quick when we see something we disagree with or we don't like, or we get selectively outraged, and we'll fire off an email, we'll fire off a post, but we would never face to face with that person talk to them that way or do that. And here what he's saying is you need to be slow to speak. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I heard a guy the other day, one of the podcasts I listened to, and he was talking about all the stuff that we're dealing with, the season that we're in, and he said, I really respected this guy, and I don't always agree with everything that he says. He's a political pundit, and I don't always agree with everything he says, but the one thing he said that I really liked, he said in this season, he said, listen, guys, don't listen to pundits like me. He said, no matter what your political persuasion is, whether you're right, left, in the middle, center, whatever, he said, don't listen to pundits like me who are so quick to give opinions when they've not worked through the issues and don't totally understand what's going on. I really respected that guy for saying that. And it caused me to think sometimes I don't have to have an opinion on everything in this world when I don't have all the information, or as a good friend of mine likes to say, it's above my pay grade. And so sometimes in my anger and my frustration with things I'm going through in life, I don't always have to voice it. And I need to measure my response and think through what my response will be. Imagine in your marriages, in your relationships, at work, on social media, whatever, where you live your life, if we could just get this down. The old adage where we would tell our kids, count to 10 before you get angry, it really works, I think. If we would think and put it through the lens of Christ before we open our mouth about stuff, it could really change the world. Next thing he says here, look what he says. He says, and be slow to become angry. I think that is, the way we do that is you got to analyze the source of your anger. It's one thing for me, hey man, be slow to be angry, but it's another thing in practice when something happens that really gets your blood boiling. But I think one way that we can temper that, one way we can get slow, is we need to really take stock of why am I angry. I got a friend who's a counselor, and he says anger is just simply a symptom of a deeper problem. And so you got to always ask yourself this question, why is this making me so mad? Sometimes it can be fear. Sometimes it's because, like I said, we're a lack of control. But we have to ask, what is the deep-seated thing going on in me that's causing my reaction in this moment to be one of so much anger? You've got to analyze it. And if you can analyze it, you can take the time to really dig into it. I think it helps us as we understand more of where it comes from, then that slows us down in our anger. I'll give you an example. Just not long ago, I was in an instance where someone had said some things to me, about me, had really hurt me. They were, in my opinion, untrue. They were very hurtful, personal attack, and I got really hot. Now remember, I told you there's a place to get angry when you are attacked. When someone is hurting someone you love, there's a place to get angry. But the problem is my anger went from being mad at the situation to leading on into unrighteous anger. I was mad. I was hot under the collar. I walked downstairs. I came down to my wife, and I was just talking. I was just really upset. I won't tell you what I said. I was just mad. I was angry. I was like, if I could get this person in front of me right now, I would throat punch them. That's what I wanted to do. I was mad. I was like, oh, I want to get it. My wife looked at me and said, hey, you need to calm down. And then as I was calming down, I was like, honey, I got a little rational. I said, where is this coming from? And she said, well, I know where it's coming from. I said, what do you mean? She said, the reason you're getting so mad is you feel like this person because when you were a little kid, when you were in elementary school, you were bullied. And she said, and you feel like this person is bullying you. And you've got to the point now, you're not going to let anybody bully you again. And it was like this light switch came on. I was like, wow, that is so true. It helped me to understand where this anger was coming from, and it also helped me understand how to deal with it, how to be calm in the face of it, and to get to the root of it. And maybe you need to do some self-reflection of yourself. Because here's the thing. Look at what he says. He says in verse 20. Here's the thing about it. He says, human anger. Not righteous anger. Not anger at injustice. Not God-given anger at the wrongs of the world. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Now that word righteous means to be right in the eyes of God, to be right with God. And of course, through Jesus Christ, through what He did on the cross, through the power of the gospel, if you have a relationship with Jesus, you are right in the eyes of God. But you are to live righteously. You are to live out the command, love God, love your neighbor. You are to live that out. You are to be a righteous person. And so you're to live rightly. You are to have Christ-like character. And of course, we're not there yet. We're going to fall. We're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. But the point he's making there is that our anger, our sinful anger, our wrong anger, our uncontrolled anger, our unfettered anger, our human anger does not produce Christ-like character. And I guess, if you're listening and you're not a believer, maybe you're pushing back, you're like, well, when people do things to me, I get angry. I get that. There is a place for right anger. But here he's saying that anger that's not right. And as a Christian, the goal is to live like Jesus. And maybe you're not quite sure yet. You're still checking this out. You're still trying to figure out what you believe, if you believe in Christ or this whole Christian thing. But can't you agree with me that when you look at the life of Jesus, it's a pretty good model to live after? And so then he goes on. I want you to notice this. Look what he says in verse 21. He wraps it up. He gives us one more thing that we got to do if we're going to deal with the anger that comes from within. Because remember, the cause of my anger is not they, he or she. It's me. It's in here. It's not out there. It's inside here. He gives us one more thing that we need to do. Look what he says in verse 21. He says, therefore, get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent. Here it comes. And humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you. Humbly accept the word that's planted in you. What is he talking about there? The word that is planted in you is the gospel. The word that saves you is the gospel, the good news of Christ. The gospel that changes us. The gospel that changes everything. The truth that we are far more loved than we ever dreamed, but far more sinful than we ever imagined. And therefore Jesus comes, dies for our sins, takes that punishment for us. We enter into relationship with Him, and He begins to change us. That word that if you're a believer, you accepted. It was implanted in you by God, by the Spirit. And He says, humbly accept it, humbly believe it, humbly walk in it. And so the last thing we got to do to deal with our anger is this. We've got to humbly give up control to the one who's in control. At the end of the day, all that stuff that makes me so mad, that stuff that I want to punch, that stuff out there, I got to realize that I'm responsible for my response. And I can't control anyone. I can't control the situation. Guys, we can't control the season we're in right now. And so I got to surrender and give it control to the one who's ultimately in control. The one who is not taken by surprise when this stuff we're dealing with happened. The one who is still in control of your life the one who knew you before you were born, the one who keeps the earth in motion, the one who made the universe, the great creator, the one who died for your soul and loves you and knows every hair on your head. We got to give up control and give it to Him. And you see, when we do that, then we begin to see ourselves and our situations and our circumstances through the lens of the gospel. Our need to control the world, our need to control others, our need to find our worth in the situations that we can control and manage, and our need to care what other people think, that all goes away because we see ourselves through the lens of the way Jesus sees us. We see ourselves through the lens of Christ. And our desperate need to get what we want is changed, because then we want what Christ wants. And then we don't have to get angry at the things that we can't control. We don't have to get angry when people slight us. We don't have to get angry when things don't go the way we want, because we know ultimately we have Christ. He will never stop loving us. He will never not give us what we need emotionally and spiritually. So it doesn't matter what happens out there. It matters what He's doing in here. He can change us. And this is done through the power of the Spirit. And so, we got to remember, guys, the cause of my anger is not they, that, he, or she. It's me. And I want you to think about something as we close out. You notice every time I hit this thing, what does it do? It comes back on me. I can hit it hard. It comes back hard. That is such an example of my anger. When I blow up, when I get angry, when I put it out there and I think I'm pushing back on everything out there and I'm responding, what's it doing? I can never keep this thing down. It always comes back. And it always hits me in the chest. You put your anger out there that's deep in here, it always comes back on you. It comes back in ways that don't help you to grow as a person. It comes back in ways that destroys your relationships. It comes back in ways that are harmful. It comes back in ways that hurt your witness. It comes back in ways that are not good for your soul and your sanity. It's time to understand that we're responsible for our response. And let's give our control and our anger to Jesus and stop putting it on he, she, they, or that. I know it comes from here. Let's go to the Lord. Let's pray, guys. Father, what a challenging word for me, God. And this is one of those areas, Lord, that I have to daily crucify, daily sacrifice, daily give to you, Lord. God, right now, there's a lot of things going on in our world, a lot of things that can make us fearful, and sometimes out of that fear, we can get angry at situations as we have to deal with people, as we go to the grocery store, as we go about our day, as we're quarantined. But help us understand, one, God, we don't have to be fearful of anything because you've overcome fear. And secondly, Lord, may we understand, God, that we need to really take a look at what's going on deep in here, to know that our anger comes from within. And may you, through your Spirit, change that. May we see ourselves the way you see us, God. And may we understand we don't need anyone else's approval, God. We simply need yours. We give you this moment, Lord, in Jesus' name.